Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 397. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com. And we're excited to have with us the acclaimed and celebrated comic creator of Starr Slam, Ged Hartland.
Wow, thank you. That's quite an intro. Thank you.
Yeah. As of this recording, you have imminently your first Kickstarter, and
Yes.
it is Starr Slam. So it is, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is kind of like a sci-fi / wrestling comic.
Yeah. So the way I would kind of describe it is, if you are intrigued by like films like Galaxy Quest, Cowboys versus Aliens, read the Bruce Willis kind of aging hitman group, that kind of thing. It's very much along those lines. It's a fun sci-fi adventure romp about a group of veteran wrestlers that have kind of were at the top of the chain many years ago. They've kind of begin to rust now, and as they're traveling across country to their next gig, out of nowhere an alien ship smashes into the dirt next to them, and they get kind of pulled into this alien invasion story that pans out over 5 issues.
What were some of your initial inspirations of combining like the worlds of professional wrestling and science fiction?
Starr Slam actually began as a movie script like about 8 to 10 years ago, because I studied writing for film and TV at university, and I just was really taken by it, and so it was one of the first scripts I ever did, and I always had a passion for wrestling, so I was really into it way back in the early 90s with like the Hogan and the Warrior and all of those kind of characters as a kid, and then drifted out of it a bit. And then my friends started talking about it in the like late 90s, which was like the Attitude Era, when you had the likes of The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin kind of coming to the fore. And I just kind of checked into it, and I was just immediately hooked. Like I was like, wow, this is like a jolt to the system, because it was a bit more edgy then, really funny, I thought, at times. The crowds were just crazy, and so since then, really, I've kind of always kind of kept an eye on it, and watched like the big matches and everything. And then when I came out of university, I was looking at ideas of like, okay, well, how, what script should I do and everything, and it just felt right to do a wrestling script. At the time there wasn't really any kind of wrestling movies. I mean, recently you've kind of seen some coming forward, things like Glow, but at the time there wasn't really anything. So I just felt like, feels like maybe there's a bit of an untapped thing there. And initially I think I was trying to write it as a grounded story, but just because I'm raised on sci-fi and fantasy and everything, I just felt like it merging the two. And the story kind of came quite quickly really to me, and because there's so many larger than life characters to draw inspiration from in the wrestling world and stuff, the characters felt quite easy really to pull together. And
So I'm curious, because I used to, as you said, watching wrestling in the 90s, it just seems like the 80s and 90s was just like the golden age of, wrestling in that sense.
Yeah.
And do your characters here play the archetypes of their characters, or are they playing their real life wrestlers put into a very unique situation?
They're playing like their real life selves in this, if you get what I mean. But they have a lot of baggage from being those characters and everything, and they still call each other by those characters' names. I mean, and that's no different, I think, to if you look at, like, say, the WWE. I mean, everyone calls the Undertaker Taker.
Right.
No one calls him Mark Calloway or anything. He's just known as Taker to everyone. So there's definitely some of that. But like, for example, one of the characters, who's a bit of a play on like the Ultimate Warrior and Sting character with like having face paint, who's called the Spartan. His whole arc really is that he's taking his craft very, very seriously, and during his career he decided it would be a really good idea to have his mask like tattooed onto his face, which turned out to be a terrible idea, and now he's kind of like burdened with that forever. So there's a lot of that kind of plays into it.
And so as you say, Starr Slam blends wrestling with sci-fi. How did you approach writing action sequences that bring the excitement of wrestling matches into a comic book format?
Well, I mean, wrestling in itself is like theatrical anyway. It's physical storytelling, and but I didn't find it that difficult, to be honest, to do like kind of the action side of the story, because the characters are so physical anyway. You could kind of build the action scenes and the fight scenes and everything, and draw in some of their move sets. So like we as they drop their finishers during the action scenes against like the aliens and everything, and I have like a hardcore character in there, so it just felt natural that okay, he's definitely going to use everything around him at his disposal. Whereas there's like the kind of the main heavyweight champion Jack Dallas, who's much more of a big burly character and everything. It was like, well, he's going to clearly like throw punches in a very, very different way, and it just felt quite like natural, really, like the way the kind of the action unfolded when I was writing it, really. It's just difficult, I guess, to you want to do something that hasn't been done before in terms of like finishes and stuff, so you're not just feeling like you're just copying like the main stars and everything.
Well, that was going to be my next question, is like, the story revolves around veteran wrestling stars like Jack Dallas and the Spartan.
Mm-hmm.
What made you focus on the older veteran wrestlers as the heroes of the series?
I just think because like I find like the wrestling lifestyle fascinating in a way, because I just think it's crazy the way they do. It's one thing to kind of stay fit and healthy and everything, the size that they're at, but they're doing shows like 4, 5, 6 times a week. Once they finish a show, they drive like 200 miles or something to the next one the next day. Then they've got to get in the gym, probably carrying injuries and everything. You've got all the politics and story mapping and everything they have to go through before a show, and it just felt more interesting, to be honest, that these are characters that have fallen on hard times. Probably carrying a few injuries, like both mental and physical, and that just felt like it had a lot of kind of scope, really, for storytelling, for conversations, etc. And the fact that they've fallen on hard times and stuff, it's not like they can throw money at this situation, resolve it or anything. That it's them versus this intergalactic threat, basically, and it's just them. They don't have any help, really. So and I was looking at, like I say, films like Galaxy Quest was a big inspiration. Red, Guardians of the Galaxy, like that kind of plucky underdog. I kind of dig those kind of films.
Well, then I guess, how does the wrestling stars' in-ring skills translate to their battle against an alien invasion, and how did you make their fight different from, say, like traditional superhero stories?
So I mean, like I say, really, you've got like a hardcore character in there called like Napalm Sam, who
Okay.
has fought in every kind of type of hardcore battle royal that is going. So there's a running joke basically throughout the series of him dropping in the types of like battles he's been in and how he would resolve a situation, because there's like a certain object around which he used to kind of like, win a battle earlier on in his career. And yeah, like that plays a big part in how he gets involved in it. There's a dynamic as well between there's a bit of a tug of war really between the Jack Dallas character and the Spartan character in there. So because Jack has always been the top guy and he's refused to kind of budge from that position, and Spartan has been the guy that never kind of ascended very much to the top. So they are two very, very solo figures and everything. And I like the idea that, gradually and hopefully towards the end, they can be that kind of tag team. There's like that tag team element and everything, which I think is like that real symbolic kind of form of friendship, like, getting together and everything, and that rallying call and everything. So yeah, that kind of plays into it. It's quite natural really to kind of bring the tag team element into it as we kind of go along.
And so, without giving too much away, what can readers expect from this intergalactic conflict in Starr Slam?
Like I say, I just think it was a really fun story to write. If you are a fan of wrestling, there's plenty of nods I think that you'll get a kick out of in there. If you just love a good sci-fi comedy story, anything like Ghostbusters, Men in Black, anything like that, you'll get a kick out of as well. That these are larger than life characters. They have a very the alien threat in it is very serious. He's not to be messed with, and everything I think is a real physical threat for them. So I think when we get into doing the art and everything, I'm really looking forward to like working with the artist on the panels and everything for that. I think he's going to do something really, really special with kind of the battles we're going to have on the page for it.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. And so it's interesting because it's a comic book with wrestlers in it. Both wrestlers and comic books are great larger than life mediums. So do you see wrestlers reading this comic, or do you see comic readers reading about wrestling? Who's your audience for this, would you say?
I mean, hopefully both. Like I say, the types of stories I've drawn inspiration from and everything, I'd like to think will appeal to comic fans. But I mean, the more I see on social media and everything, it feels like a lot of wrestling fans are comic fans just because they love. I mean, wrestling is all about storytelling. It's sports entertainment. So, when you look at like big WrestleMania moments and everything, it is about the underdog on a journey of like a year or something to get to the title. It can be like brother versus brother, even husband versus wife at times with some of the things I've seen with like Vince and Linda McMahon. Like I say, I just think wrestling fans just love good storytelling. If you've seen it in the WWE over the last like 2 or 3 years, there's been like an epic story unfolding between for the like main championship with Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns, and The Rock has came back into that, and he's been given the kind of title, the final boss for that and everything, which is an awesome title to kind of give him. And the way they've, I think, portrayed him, the way they've shot him at times during that, like, is almost like as a comic book character. I mean, he's massive anyway, but I just think the way they've framed him at times when he's entering the arena, and like when he arrived for WrestleMania and he was shot from a really long way away when John Cena's in the ring and everything. I thought it was really clever the way they did it with him just being this really small figure, but just getting larger and larger. He's getting to the ring and stuff, and yeah, it's just it looked like a comic book, to be honest, when I was watching it. As like whoever did the camera work for that deserves big plaudits, I think.
And so you have 5 issues written out, correct?
Yes, so the scripts are done and dusted for them. Yeah, because this, I mean, it was from a movie script, so I just wanted to kind of see when I was initially writing it, can I turn this into a several issues, really? Like how would it even work? Because I wanted to make sure that it didn't feel too jarring to end each issue. I didn't want to feel it was just like, oh, that's ended. I wanted to make sure that each issue had like enough action in it, and it had like maybe a bit of a cliffhanger element to each issue, because it's a bit different with writing a movie script, because you've kind of got like the exciting incident a third of the way into the story, and then you've got your big finale, but then you've got that kind of second act, which is usually a bit more talking and kind of backstory and everything, and there's like less kind of actually happening. So that was kind of the middle of the story, really, was where I needed to do some kind of like nip tucks, really, to kind of turn it properly into a comic.
So what did you learn about your writing style when you took a movie script and turned it into a comic script?
Um, I think it was, I had to actually really focus more on the characters, because as I was going along, it was, I think you can easily say, okay, I'm just going to drop a cliffhanger in there, like and then job done. But I really wanted it to feel like each issue I was like challenging myself to say, okay, do the characters kind of have a starting point at the start of this issue, and is there a bit of a theme in there, and they end the issue as a slightly different person almost, really. So I wanted it to feel like they're going on a bit of a journey, and for each issue to, because it's an ensemble, is there'll be a slightly different focus, so one or two of the characters will come to the fore with each issue, really, and then they'll all kind of merge together at the end. Whereas in the movie itself, really, I felt like it was much more heavily focused on the Jack Dallas and Spartan characters, because when I was writing it, I kept thinking of like having it as Arnold Schwarzenegger and Stallone in those two roles. So I guess I was thinking, they're probably going to want as much dialogue as possible. But that was me getting a really far ahead of myself. I was thinking they were going to have any chance of being in it.
With 5 issues planned, as we said, for Starr Slam, do you have any other plans to continue the series or explore other wrestling related stories after this initial arc?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't initially, like when I did the first movie script for it. I felt like, oh, it's a definitive end, but then I think it's like anything, especially when it's like sci-fi and fancy, and you've enjoyed writing the characters. Like, is there anything kind of left there to explore? And then the more I've thought about it over time, and yeah, I definitely have another volume that's fairly well mapped out in my head, really, I think, and potentially a third volume as well. So I've got a loose idea for that. So yeah, I feel that there's still a lot of story to tell with these guys, and because it's a wrestling world, I definitely feel there's license to bring in other characters. We're meeting like 5 or 6 of them, but the wrestling world's like got hundreds of different unique kind of characters in there, so there's plenty of other rivalries, I think, that can kind of come in and out as well.
Mm. And so, what advice would you give any aspiring comic creators who want to combine some, genres like wrestling and science fiction, like seemingly unrelated genres? Because you combine wrestling and science fiction, which is kind of unique. So,
Yeah.
what advice would you give other aspiring comic creators that want to combine two seemingly unrelated genres into one story?
To be honest, it wasn't really. I was at the time. I wasn't thinking it was about combining the genres. It was just my passion, and what I felt comfortable writing, really. And that is what I would say, and that's what I've always felt I've done with all of my scripts. Really, is just kind of write what you love,
Right.
and what you feel comfortable writing with. I don't think I could kind of write a sci-fi story that's about, I don't know, horse racing as well, or something like that. It's just not something that I'm kind of knowledgeable or confident about. But yeah, it just felt right for me to do that. And I just think as well, it's the other thing I'd kind of say is, maybe no story is ever kind of set in one format. Like I say, this was a movie script, and I felt it was kind of done and dusted, and wasn't going anywhere. And what I've found particularly over the last like 4 or 5 years, is just, there's so many people that have done similar things where they've done it in one form or another, and then found that they've actually it's been brought to life in a completely another form, whether it be as a Kindle book or as a podcast or something. So, whatever form you're writing in, if you feel that, maybe it's not going forward, and maybe like that's a door closed to you, don't kind of write it off really at all. Just maybe look at how else is there another direction I can kind of take it in to kind of bring it to life. That would be my advice.
All right, so Ged, say somebody is watching this interview a year from now, and they said, "Man, I missed the Kickstarter. It happened 11 months ago, or happened 2 years ago. I want to get a copy of Starr Slam." If somebody wants to get a copy of Starr Slam in the next 2 years, where can they do that?
We'll hopefully be able to get it on ASAP Imagination's website. We'll be making it available on there. Yeah, so they're the team that have kind of supported me with this. Amazingly collaborative team. They found me my artist to work with. They've kind of really like guided me through this whole process, and they've got a whole host of awesome titles on their books now. They just seem to be growing and growing. I really feel that there is literally something for everyone in their catalogue now.
Well, so Ged, if people want to learn more about you and your work, where's the best place they could go to?
So I'm on Twitter. Oh, sorry, X now, and that's Hartland G at Hartland G, and then I'm also on Instagram and Threads, and that's under G Hart 316. And I'll be always kind of posting regular content around the Kickstarter, the comic, all of the artwork that we've been doing, and probably getting involved in various discussions on films and comics wherever I like to, because I especially love the Threads community. It's a real creative writing community on there and everything, and there seems to be a lot of wrestling fans as well, which is cool. I've been getting involved in some of those like threads that have kind of been going on.
Well, thank you so much, Ged, and you gotta come back on when you have your next book coming out.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share this. Thank you, Barney.
All right, you're welcome. So, as we say, the Kickstarter is live. Once this, what am I trying to? This one. I love this, Ged. I can edit things later, so this is great. So, let me do that. 2750.